I want to talk about self-compassion during hard times today because I'm going through a bit of a hard time myself. So there's a lot of kind of stuff percolating around this, around the felt sense of self-compassion and some of the belief systems that we tend to have about awakening. One being that, the more conscious or the more aware we become, that somehow life is going to get easier. I think this is a really common misperception about growing and changing as a human being and starting to discover more of our true nature. We tend to associate that with pleasure, with bliss, with things being more harmonious, more easeful. And in some ways that's true, but it's also a harmony and an ease with what is. And sometimes what is quite difficult, quite challenging, abrasive, painful. So we can, of course, reduce some of the suffering that we experience through these periods of time. But if we're looking to reduce the pain of hard times, sadly, you would be mistaken that is one of the outcomes of becoming more aware or more conscious. And perhaps eventually it might arise that, there's a little bit less difficulty in life, but I wouldn't know, because to be honest, I feel like my own journey has been one of increasing challenge. The more conscious, the more aware that I become. And that challenge also asks me, even demands, that I view it through a really conscious, present state of being. And that in and of itself presents its own difficulties, that, when we're no longer able to dissociate in quite the same way as we used to, if it's more difficult for us to distract ourselves from the moment, then we have to fully feel and fully experience the pain that is arising in life. So this is one of the first kind of real reality hits that can happen during an awakening process, is this recognition that, actually, this isn't a magic bullet, this isn't a magic pill to feeling good. This is actually presenting me with more challenge. It's confronting me with deeper, sometimes more painful aspects of experience that I would have otherwise chosen to ignore or turned away from or run away from. So I notice, as time has gone on, that I am more and more present with the difficulty, and that does provide a kind of relief. It's sort of like, by not avoiding, not running away from, not trying to suppress pain, suffering, fear, sadness, grief, all of those emotions that we might categorize as difficult emotions or negative emotions, which really aren't. They're just another kind of color of the experience of divine diversity. But when they come up, if we're able to meet them fully, we're less likely to amplify them or to recreate situations in which they have to come back around. But that doesn't necessarily mean that things automatically get easier, because when we start to see things and we meet them head on, we go deeper and deeper and deeper into the layers of our identity, which have been storing all of these past things. We might call them samskaras, karmic patterning, right? And the deeper we go, it's like, cleaning a wound, that the surface of the wound, just sort of brushing it slightly, hurts a little bit. But if there's some material in there that really needs to be dug out, then it can be quite painful to go deep. So, yeah, I guess when we start to think then about self compassion, we're faced with the necessity of being present to even moments where we don't feel self compassion, or where self compassion is particularly challenging, or even realms in which we need to navigate how to be self compassionate and hold ourselves accountable at the same time. Because those two, in a less conscious state of mind, can be seen as mutually exclusive, that either we have to choose self-compassion or we have to choose accountability. And that's a lot to do with our conditioning in this life as well. Many of us were raised in family situations or cultural situations where the idea of accountability was really tied to punishment. And this sense that, we have to kind of internally beat ourselves up if we're genuinely going to be accountable. There's a disbelief that we're capable of doing what we need to do unless there's this external, forceful, motivating factor in the form of guilt or punishment. And so beginning to hold accountability and self-compassion simultaneously is a total flip from where we were previously. And we have to kind of relearn what it means to feel motivated to do things in the right way, to shift our life towards loving kindness for all beings, including ourselves. And making that pattern shift can be fraught with a little bit of inner conflict. We can have this sense that there's a part of us that is trying to meet the situation with compassion, with clear seeing, and with an allowing of what is, while simultaneously doing what we need to do in terms of responsibilities. And yet there's this other part of us that is still very much tied into the old conditioning that thinks that the only way forward is avoidance or punishment, self-punishment. We don't even need to be in a situation where we've done anything wrong to feel that urge towards self-punishment. Sometimes it can be factors far outside of our control. And even just the experience of failure in life, or the inability to thrive in the situation we're in due to external influences, can result in this sense of plummeting self-worth and a lack of love for ourselves, or this sense that somehow we have done something wrong when we haven't. And one of the real difficulties with sensing into self-compassion, if we haven't experienced it before, is quite often our culture presents self-compassion in this polarized way. There's low self-worth, and then there's positive self-worth, and positive self-worth is often imaged as this kind of like, I can stand in the mirror and look at myself and say I'm a divine being, or I'm utterly worthy. It's presented very much in toxic positivity kind of affirmation terms, but that isn't actually what self-compassion is. And it's also not a very accessible way of teaching self-compassion, especially for folks who've had complex trauma or attachment issues, or whose sense of self-worth has been severely damaged early on in life. I like the idea of leaning towards self-compassion, that, even if we can't feel self-compassion, we can lean in that direction. And providing these sort of stepping stones towards positive affirmation, which don't look like an extreme denial of what we're actually experiencing, but more of a neutralizing of what we're experiencing. For example, if I'm feeling like a failure, rather than kind of going, I am a success or something of the equivalent. I could neutralize the I am a failure by saying I feel like a failure right now. And I recognize that I'm not able to see the full truth from my perspective. What's it like for me to hold open the possibility that there is more than failure present right now? And so that can be a way of sort of leaning in towards self-compassion when we don't fully know what it might be like to really experience it from the heart sense. And from the heart sense, for me, self-compassion isn't this positive affirmation. It's an embrace or an allowing or honor and acknowledgement of what is. It isn't a positivizing of what is, nor is it a negativizing of what is. It's simply a clear seeing. In other words, loving awareness, that the quality of awareness, when it starts to really wake up and drop into a more heartfelt position in the body being, the quality of awareness is love. But not love in the way that we might understand it as human love, where we kind of experience attachment to particular beings or objects in our lives. It's the love of all embracing, of seeing reality for what it is, of not rejecting, not suppressing, not pushing away. It's the love of truth. And so when we can kind of drop into this space of seeing things as they truly are without applying judgment to them, that awareness does develop a loving quality, an embracing quality. So starting to develop this first by kind of leaning gently towards compassion, even if we haven't really experienced that quality of loving awareness yet. And then slowly building our capacity to see things as they are from this perspective of truth, of allowing, of non-rejection, non-judgment is really, really helpful. So I'm going through I guess, it would be termed a failure to thrive in some ways, here in what I hoped was my new home. And I'm needing to contend with the possibility that perhaps something quite drastic needs to change in order to stabilize things, to stabilize my energy, to create a space that is workable. And that's a part of this clear seeing of truth, of kind of, not being in denial of what is, but beginning to work with it and allowing consciousness to guide us into the place that we need to go, rather than preferring to will ourselves into where we want to go. And this is really, really difficult. It's really difficult to honor and acknowledge truth as it is at times. And to release our attachments. I say release because I think, another one of these ideas that we get in cultures around awakening is that we have to let go, and that letting go has a much more human will energy to it, rather than letting be, allowing or releasing, which kind of, I can release this desire, or I can release this attachment without kind of pushing it away or throwing it away or rejecting it. And that slows the process down quite a lot, because, I used to run from one thing to another. It was like as soon as I realized that something wasn't working, I'd kind of race to get somewhere else in the hopes that that next thing would work. And it's been through years and years of these attempts to kind of like construct a reality that I like or that I desire, and having that fail, that I've realized it doesn't really work that way. And so now, when I'm confronted with these hard times, I have to sit in the midst of and grapple with and kind of be in the discomfort of things not working and really see that as truth and have compassion for both the truth itself that I'm witnessing and for this being that's witnessing it, for this human and their five senses and their capacity to feel pain and emotion and hurt. How we move along this path, I think, is really what matters. Releasing the idea that we're aiming to arrive at an enlightened state, and realizing that the awakening itself or the arrival is the path. Our journey from place to place, from moment to moment, from emotion to emotion, or happy situation to painful situation. It's the way that we move between those experiences that is the true awakening. It's not a goal or an arrival point. It's not a place that we're going to get to where sometime in the future, life is going to be more easeful or everything's going to be harmonious. We need to find a way of circumnavigating our experience and exploring that whole terrain, the entire circumference of our being in this world in a way that's truly accepting of the truth of the moment, of what's arising. Even if that's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't fit into our perception of what awakening should be. Because awakening is about truth, and truth is what presents itself. I think quite often we have these very, very subtle egoic perceptions, and they can be so cleverly disguised. But these very subtle perceptions of how things should be, even in our acceptance, this sense that if I accept this, if I have self-compassion for myself, then that means in the next moment I'm going to feel free, or I'm going to feel content or happy, or I'm going to feel fully awake. We kind of try and trick the universe. We bargain with it. We say, if I accept this shitty situation, please make it better. But that is not the nature of this reality. It's not something to be bargained with. Awakening isn't for our pleasure. Awakening is for awakening itself, for seeing things as they really are. It's the love of truth at its center point, not the love of truth in order to achieve bliss. And so getting really honest in these hard times is a part of that self-compassion, because then we're not stringing ourselves along. We're not kind of baiting ourselves with the proverbial carrot to keep going, but to be in what is for its own sake, for the sake of seeing it, for the sake of allowing the truth to be metabolized, there's one phrase that comes up in relation to the kind of tantric goddesses of like eating the reality. Be a sin eater, even if it's your own fallibility that's presenting itself as truth, then eat that, metabolize it, really accept it into reality as it is. And that's where a loving awareness arises naturally, without any effort. Thanks for listening. I'd love for you to like or subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, what your experiences are. It's all really helpful to me to have community, to make connection. And yeah, I'll see you next time.